Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another expert webinar series for Golden Shovel Agency. This is our February webinar, and we're very pleased to invite an expert webinar presenter, Peter Coate. He's co-owner at Open Counter. He's going to be presenting today from many small seeds, community-based economic development. My name is Aaron Brissois. I'm the CEO at Golden Shovel, and after doing the intro, I'll be moderating some questions at the end. The presentation's probably going to go about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up for questions. You'll notice on the GoToWebinar panel that you can type in questions. It's over on the right side. Everybody is in mute mode, and so if you have a question, feel free to type it in, and after the presentation, we'll ask them as they come up and as we have time. So I guess also just to add in, there'll be a recording of this presentation available afterwards. So if you're interested in that, you can contact Victor directly, and we'll be able to send that over to you. And Peter's also going to be making a PDF file available of the slides, and we'll be able to share those with anybody that would like additional information. And so with nothing more to do, let me introduce the session and Peter. So economic development often centers on large capital investments such as stadiums, conventions, and arts centers. With the exception of a few forward-thinking governments, small business support has not been a core economic development function, leaving entrepreneurs with few tools to access, interpret, and understand existing city policies, zoning, and fees. Tools like Open Counter can use existing published city data to discover and calculate fees, clarifying zoning and use requirements, and even estimate ongoing costs of operation by flagging special assessment districts. As we'll be learning today. And Peter Coate is an experienced economic development professional. Most recently, Peter worked for the city of Santa Cruz, from leading a regional broadband policy group to opening up city data to spearheading policy initiatives that lowered administrative barriers to job creation. So with nothing more, welcome, Peter.
Right on. Thank you very much, Aaron. It's a pleasure to be here this morning with Golden Shovel. And thank you also to Victor for handling all the technical issues and organizing today's webinar. As Aaron mentioned, I most previously worked for the city of Santa Cruz. It's a small coastal community of about 55,000, about an hour south of San Francisco on the Pacific Ocean. I am really thrilled about the opportunities to help small businesses. They are the cornerstone of our neighborhoods. They represent the largest single investment any citizen can make in a community, and it's where the majority of private sector jobs and private sector payroll come from. Oftentimes in Santa Cruz, we were looking at an economy that was in a constant state of flux. We lost almost our entire industrial base after the signing of NAFTA in the mid-1990s and lost over 4,000 jobs from plants like Texas Instruments, Wrigley, Lipton. All of those jobs were offshored, and we were left with a large, empty industrial base, and we're also hit by a very large earthquake in 1989 that decimated our main retail district. I joined the city in 2008, and essentially what our economic development plan from the late 1990s said was go and use every available asset, including tax increment financing, to recruit a company that looks like this. A large, stable employer. This is Apple's new campus in Cupertino, California, with high-wage jobs by assembling property and using basically tax abatements to get this company in. That was very difficult in Santa Cruz as there's no land. The land value is quite high, and environmental concerns as well as neighborhood impacts should probably stop a project like this. But what we did have was companies that looked like this. This is actually Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, back when Apple was a small company. And we had firms like Nest, who was bought by Google for $3.5 billion last year. And we had firms, a decade ago like Netflix come into City Hall to secure their first entitlements for their first offices. And it was difficult for these entrepreneurs who had market-changing ideas to get their heads around land use entitlements, zoning, business licensing, the interactions between state, county, and local governments, and just learning a whole new vocabulary at a time when they're very stressed out about getting their business off the ground, and learning about very complex projects in stepwise motion, oftentimes being told minutes before a fee, or only hearing about processes after that they opened. In one case, a friend of mine, I'll just call him Peter because that's actually his name as well, went in to secure a business license in the city of Santa Cruz because his firm won a contract with SAP. Now his firm is virtual and they had employees all over the country, but they needed a local business license in order to do this project with SAP, the large enterprise firm. And the permit intake person at the City Hall in Santa Cruz said, "How long have you been in business?" And Peter said, "Oh, about 5 years." And so his first interaction was a bill for back taxes for the last 5 years. So instead of spending $100 on a business license, he was looking at close to $700 in fees. That's not a way to retain a business or to grow an economy that's based on new job creation and fast-growing firms. And this is not just about tech businesses. This is about restaurateurs, retailers, researchers, people working in new fields in material sciences or drones or any of the other emerging markets that are happening right now. These businesses, thanks to the growth of the internet, can start anywhere, and you want to be able to attract and retain the opportunities that are walking in the front door. It's a little bit radical to say, but I really think that the economic development as a practice area in the public sector has been focused for a really long time on the large employers. We read about the McDonnell Douglases and the Boeings being able to get these state-level deals, but at the same time, these smaller firms have a real hard time even understanding the vocabulary, let alone accessing programs and services. We still, to a large extent, rely upon this information capture device, the 8.5 by 11. Now, there are those that will argue that this never needs rebooting, which is true. It isn't the most efficient way to channel information into an organization that's going to use a piece of data in 20 or 30 different ways. So, the information that you put on your administrative land use permit is also relevant to your business license application. It may also be relevant to an encroachment permit application, or it could be relevant to a health inspection application. Why are we asking an applicant to know their APN number, their general plan designation, their gross square footage of their lot? The city has this information in its GIS systems. What if we're able to ask one piece of information and then make a call to that GIS system to get the qualified city data that we know is accurate, rather than relying upon the handwriting of an applicant, rekeying that into an ERP system, and forcing your permit intake people to retype the handwritten notes of an entrepreneur, which may or may not be accurate, and this system can be gamed by people coming in, getting the answer they don't want to hear, returning the next day, and shopping for planners. This is probably less of an issue throughout the rest of the country that has a sensible taxation regime, but Furlough Friday is still a fact of life in California. I'm a generation 8, but we very much have non-standard hours, and have, I believe, 480 cities in the state of California, but we have 4,667 special districts. So if you're trying to do a project anywhere, you may be interacting with a utility district, an air district, a water district, a city, a county, and the state. That's a lot to wrap your head around if you are an excellent programmer, but again, you're not experts in how to do municipal processes. The application portion of any project has huge implications for the costs of that project as well as the timelines. If one is able to kind of apply en masse and have all of the permits and licenses surfaced early in the process, then that helps them for budget planning and it helps them for setting expectations and not getting frustrated with the process. But if you're learning about each step in a commercial development process as it happens, and you're getting different communications from different parts of the city at different times, sometimes conflicting, that leads to high levels of frustration. This is a restaurant on the west side of Santa Cruz that came in. It was a change of use, a rehab of an old industrial structure. I mean, as you can tell, they did a beautiful job on the architecture. It's a very successful restaurant at this point. But early on in the process, a plan check review cycle didn't go well, and one key department didn't weigh in on the development impact fees for this project that actually totaled about $75,000. And that fee was not surfaced until about 4 or 5 months into the actual entitlement process. That stopped the process in its tracks because the commercial loan had already been issued for the development project, and there was not $75,000 of contingencies in it. They came to the city, halfway through the project, very disgruntled. It required the work of our department heads and our council in closed session to work out a fee abatement strategy and a financing strategy so that this restaurant could open on time. That just consumed a lot of administrative time, used a lot of political capital, and really that assessment was right. The city needed that money in order to do traffic improvements around this area, which was zoned industrial. But it's just, we needed to tell the applicant on day one, not on day 125. One of the things about starting a business or scaling a business is that you have a great idea, you've got a great corporate story, you've got a product or a service like this ice cream parlor that Zach and Kendra started. They think when they come into the city they're going to need a permit or maybe a building permit and a business license. But in actuality, by the time you're done doing the full discovery process, you're going to need at a minimum 20 different permits in order to open a food service business. And this goes to, again, special districts, the county, the city. There are dependencies for these permits. There are commonalities between these permits. And really, there's just been no way to date where you can surface all of these in one spot through one application process, where you can figure out the timelines, the dependencies, the cost, and the complexities of a project, and have that application session be keyed not only to the type of project that you want to do, like a commercial tenant improvement, but also that project's location and then ultimately the public use of that piece of land. OpenCounter does not change any city rules. It does not change any regulations. It is exactly the presentation of the municipal code, but in a software-based rules engine. What we're trying to do, and I'm going to do a video of the application process up in Truckee, California, a town of about 16,000. First thing we try to do is capture a lead. So we then figure out a use code and a business name. The use code is normalized back to what the zoning district and the zoning ordinance may impact how this project is treated, both square footage, employee count, even gross receipts. And at that point, like, we're able to draw a map of this address. I can check that address against what the land use requirements are in one base level. Down the two different overlays that's going to come back. So then I move into ADA accessible, these big ticket items that need to be asked. More information specific about that business, like, are you rehabbing the kitchen? Are you putting tables and chairs outside? Do you need a liquor license? And all of a sudden, through, this video is less than 2 minutes long, but all in for a building permit, cafe extension, you're going to need a C of O, you're going to need an entertainment permit, sign permit, a zoning clearance, a health permit, as well as a bunch of state level information involved. We're doing a lot of complex work around which permits can be pulled by which personas. So, if you're doing commercial tenant improvement, that needs to be pulled by a licensed and bonded contractor, whereas a business license can be pulled by any principal of the business. And what we're also doing for a lot of communities is creating the same sites, but in a number of different languages. In Long Beach, we're doing 3 languages. In Boston, Massachusetts, we're doing 6 languages. Most of our clients ask for English and Spanish. This helps, this is very targeted feedback. Maybe these services aren't available at the public counters, but they're there and available. This is the city of Salinas. It's a town of about 110,000 people on the Central Coast. 75% of the application sessions in Salinas actually come in on the Spanish side of the house. What we do on the back end, and I'm happy to show some of that as well when we're done with this presentation, is we're creating the ability to extract, the entire application, all 80 fields filled out, just the fields that are necessary for a signed permit. You can take that information and feed it to a permitting backend if it has an API. You can print an application form that's very similar to what you have on your website. You can download it as a spreadsheet. You can use OpenCounter as both like a Salesforce CRM type application where you're handling inputs from people around the town, or you can use it as the front end of a permitting or ERP system. It's up to you. And unlike many applications that are out there, we think in terms of projects. So it's not based entirely on record types. We want to show people, what's the relationship between all of these permits, what's the timelines, and maybe if that project comes in at one location, you as an expert in your local economy may be able to talk to this entrepreneur or business owner and say, have you looked at this address or that address? Suggest alternatives, provide feedback on that business plan early on. This tool will be utilized by your banking community, your business consulting community, and your investment community as they are evaluating projects as well, because the public sector permit cost is a non-trivial part of any project. So all of a sudden, your commercial bankers and lenders, as well as local investors, that were invisible. And since we're tracking both projects that can proceed as well as those that are not, we're also giving people visibility into where the actual economy is going in their area, with all of the tools for you to make policy updates, develop incentive programs, or just see where emerging retail or commercial districts are popping out. Like I said, in Santa Cruz, like the west side, which used to be primarily industrial, is now predominantly service and retail businesses, with a pretty large cluster of smaller technology firms actually subsuming that old industrial land. What that has led to is a number of initiatives for the city around getting better broadband out there, better allocation of public safety resources, better estimation of traffic impacts, and enhanced signage programs. It's basically, if all of a sudden you're tracking all of the applications and intake across the city, you just got a better viewpoint of what the actual economic development picture of the community is. So that's the high level. Happy to answer questions. Again, I really want to thank Aaron and John and Victor for allowing us this platform to chat. And we are really focused on cities of all sizes. Our smallest client is 8,000 in population. That's Gonzales, California. They have a community development department of 1. And our largest city is actually Indianapolis at 875,000. We are also lucky enough to call Boston a client, as well as Long Beach, California. So some bigger cities as well. Long Beach is about 500,000. So again, open for questions or comments, and thank you all for your time this morning.
Okay. Thank you. Feel free to type any additional questions over into the right. Might have for Peter. I have a quick question. I understand these are embeddable into an economic development website.
Aaron, there's some feedback on your end.
Okay. This is a hosted service, Aaron. You can, each city is kind of white labeled for the branding of that community, so it will reflect the colors and logos of the community. We also serve it on a URL like something like, I think we're at startyourbusiness.paloalto.org for the city of Palo Alto in California. I think we're at opencounter.city or townoftruckee.com. So we give it a URL that also matches with the city's existing URL schema.
Excellent. Would you mind showing some of the admin systems?
Sure. Let me call up a web browser. So what I'm going to do. All right. Okay. So let me minimize this. I'm still sharing my screen, right, Victor?
Yes, you are. Yes.
All right. Okay, thanks. So when you log in, you get an overview of, what is happening kind of in real time. So here's all the applications that came in Santa Cruz in, October of last year. And here's all the applications that have happened thus far in February. All of them are key to locations. And as you go through, you've got, what all of these locations come in as when they were submitted. For each application, you get, a location on a map, information about the session, who the applicant was, information on the zoning lookup, which permits were issued, as well as all the answers. And down below, you have the ability to download any of the PDF forms for the processes that were started, as well as the total application. We can also go through and do submissions into a permitting backend. Why don't I show you what that looks like in Palo Alto? So what we're doing is sitting on top of Acela, which is a pretty large permitting firm in Palo Alto, and we're actually taking all of the information collected by this front end. We're associating the fields with the same fields in their permitting backend, and creating actual record types via their API. And I know this looks like computer code and whatever, but it actually is quite important. What we do for all of the content that's in OpenCounter is that they're actually triggered by conditions being met. Now that can be like all, these fees or permits are only triggered by certain kinds of businesses. So for example, this admissions tax is only triggered by 16 types of businesses in town. Otherwise, no one will ever see it. So if you're any of these entertainment or recreation uses in Santa Cruz, then we trigger information about the fact that you're going to have to report for an admissions tax process, which is a gross receipts tax. Same thing for an entertainment permit. In that case, you really have to answer, yes, I'm doing entertainment for that process to pop up. Whereas payroll tax registration only shows up if you have more than one employee. And transit occupancy only pops up if you're a hotel and you need to pay hotel tax. What this model allows us to do is really model all of the business logic that you have in a community. So if I'm over in Los Gatos, which is in Silicon Valley, and I am an auto dealer, I will be told around these specific rules for when I can hold an auto sales event. Whereas if I'm up in Truckee, so like basically this page will only pop up if applicants say, I'm doing used or new auto sales. And I'm going to capture some specific information for this permit process that allows the city to say, okay, you can do one auto sales event per month, tell the city when it starts and ends, and it's basically their attempt to keep you know, kind of the advertising and the visual clutter cleaned up in the city. We've actually been able to model some really odd rules that we found in municipal codes. Up in Truckee, we found a home occupation process that was only applicable for gun sales and taxi services. So if somehow the applicant puts in that I'm doing a home occupation, I'm selling guns or running a taxi service, we flag this application for staff, letting them know that this specific permit is going to need to be called, and we telling them that police are going to come out and inspect, and there's going to be a background check as part of it. Similar to that, you know, there's very specific rules in Scotts Valley around you know, fingerprinting and background checks for like massage uses. So you have to prove you're a licensed physical or massage therapist, upload that documentation in order to move forward. Same thing around, you can't have a commercial stable, you know, of less than 5,000 square feet tangential to a residential district. There's also information about you can't have, you know, music after 10 o'clock if you're within 500 feet of a residential district. So all of those rules that are specific to each town are modeled out so that people know about these things. So it's basically reading the zoning ordinances, reading the Muni Code, and getting really targeted feedback, again, based on location, based on business type, and based on the answers that people supply to the system.
Thank you. How long does it take to
For most of the smaller communities, between contract execution and public launch is about 8 to 10 weeks. That largely is dependent on, you know, how many permits or records you need to get into the system, and what the quality of GIS data is that you have for us. We're just total nerds about GIS data. It really is kind of the background to you know, almost all of these processes is figuring out what locations work for each kind of business. So we've actually developed this tool, which is intended for staff, uses the same database as OpenCounter, and it's basically like you know, go through, you know, what kind of business are you planning to open, you know, any specific rules about that use code, no drive-ins, not on the second floor, and I can either type in an address and have it autocomplete based on your address database, or I can say, no, I don't know where I want to go, just draw me an overview of where this works. And you know, even for a city as large as Boston, we're taking the zoning inquiry process from, you know, multiple days and specific work from a GIS person or somebody interacting with an enterprise GIS site into you know, a couple seconds and a couple clicks that any permit intake person or any economic development person can do over the phone, or they can embed this tool on their website as part of their ED plan. And again, like if you're moving the dot around this map, or you know, showing all the various overlays and districts that are available in the city, it's all there for you to have. So what we're trying to do is make the Muni Code executable and understandable for laypersons.
Excellent, thank you. Next question. How hard is it to get community cooperation?
Well, what's interesting to us is that the adoption numbers, as well as the intake numbers, really shoot up quickly if you're able to do some PR around the availability of this tool. Visiting City Hall is not real high on most people's list of activities to do during the workday. And so by having these services online 24/7 and by using good design and good logic, the experience of sharing information about your business plan or development plan with the city, we've lowered the barrier to entry into that process. We've also made it easier for staff to provide feedback on the information supplied, because each piece of data that comes into the city, it's kind of set in stone. It's in a database at this point. Like, you know exactly what this person is planning. And if you share that data inside the city with your compatriots in development services or public works or your other allies inside the city, you're all looking at the same page. And adoption of this tool shoots up pretty rapidly. We had 1,200 applications started in Santa Cruz just in the last year, and about 175 of those applications actually went through the permitting process. That represents almost 70% of the commercial development projects in Santa Cruz started in OpenCounter last year.
Excellent. Next question. What has the feedback been from businesses in the area? Have they given feedback on the process?
We do a quality assurance process because we have like email notifications built into the system, and we send everybody that submits a user feedback survey. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive from business owners. Again, we're demystifying a potential threat to their business plans in an area where they're uncomfortable, while they're focused on, creating a great restaurant or a great retail experience. And again, because we're bringing the city side and the public side closer together so they have a more targeted conversation, we find we're eliminating pre-application meetings, we're eliminating a lot of confusion, and particularly as applicants go throughout the system, we get a lot of thank you notes from those people. So the business uptake has been really positive to date.
The next question is, other than the economic development, who are the people that are usually involved with initiating OpenCounter?
Our typical project sponsors have been usually economic development or development services. We have also been championed by city managers' offices, as well as a few IT departments have also been the primary drivers for adoption of this service. We come from an economic development background mostly because of my personal history. What we're doing just tell you where we're going with this product is right now we're focused on ED and small business development. This summer with the City of Boston, we're rolling out a similar tool for a residential construction and development. After that, we're doing special events, so renting parks, holding parades, that kind of thing. That's this time next year. And then finally, at the end of our Boston project, we're doing a portal specifically for development, for developers who are managing multiple projects with multiple contractors, and tools really built for those experts to access and clone projects in the areas. We are also, because of our engagement with the City of Palo Alto, California, for those permits and licenses that are available by right and don't require a staff review process, we are actually allowing for the submittal of payments through our website, as well as issuance of renewal notices. that we're rolling out to all our clients this summer as well. And most of our current clients are implementing that for their licenses and permits that are allowed by right. So again, the limited staff resources in these communities can then focus on those projects that require more conditional reviews, staff reports, public hearings, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. The question just came in about whether or not this webinar was being recorded, and once again, yes, it is. I posted back an answer that you just send an email to Victor. His email address is on the answer, but it's Perez, P-E-R-E-Z, at goldenshovel.com, and you can send that over to him, and he will send you a recording. Doesn't look like there are any other questions in right now. Peter, people want to get in contact with you. How would you recommend doing that?
Sure. The easiest thing to do is peter@opencounter.com. That will get me. You can also do hello@opencounter.com. That will also work. We are on Twitter @opencounter, all one word, and our website is opencounter.com. So any of those are available, and certainly look forward to anyone that's interested to do a deeper dive on where our product is at and where it's going to. And thank you everyone for your time today. It's really nice to chat with you all.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Peter, for giving the presentation. And once again, there's a PDF available as well as a video, so feel free to send us an email. Or, thank you, everybody. It looks like we're going to be wrapping up here, and thanks for participating in the Expert Webinar Series with Golden Shovel. And certainly, if you're a current Golden Shovel customer and interested in OpenCounter, we can include this product into the website. So, be excellent to pursue further. So thank you so much, everybody, for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you, Peter.